Our next guest, Geoff Johns. He's from CW Cares, which is a cable channel, you know, Gossip Girl, American's Top Model, all those wonderful things. And Geoff Johns is the producer of Stargirl, My Funny Late Sister. And I am so touched that Geoff has done this to honor his sister. It's amazing. And Heidi, you know the sibling thing, so.
I think it is absolutely phenomenal. I love that his sister is his inspiration and that she is his guiding light, and the show is wonderful.
And we really want to thank CW for supporting us and being a sponsor to this wonderful day we're having today. And enjoy, everyone.
Starman, are you there? Starman!
The Justice Society must live on. Someone with honor must carry the torch.
I know this has been difficult. The move and a new stepfather, but we're gonna make a good life.
Hey, sorry, that's just real delicate.
What are you?
It's the cosmic staff. It's extremely temperamental. The staff's not supposed to work for anyone except Starman.
This has to be the reason the staff lit up. The staff chose me, and I choose you.
I never thought there'd be another Starman.
Stargirl.
Stargirl. New series this Tuesday at 8/7 Central on the CW.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Geoff. Thank you for the time and for having me here. I have to say, I wish I had something like this, or I knew of something like this when I lost my sister, Courtney. I lost my sister in 1996. I had just moved. I graduated college from Michigan State and moved out to Los Angeles. And she was on flight TWA 800, which was a plane that went down. It had a mechanical accident that went down flying out of New York to Paris. She was a foreign exchange student. She was 18 years old. And Courtney died on the plane with all those passengers. It did feel like the main emotion that I was allowed to have was anger. And that was hard. And I really spent years trying to figure out what else to do. Because you are kind of only allowed to have anger sometimes. But I'd had a passion for comic books my entire life. And comic books were everything to me. Like I grew up with them with my brother, and we loved them, and we loved superheroes. It was just everything I loved. And I think what helped me obviously was I took my passion I had my whole life, and I decided to create a character based on my sister Courtney called Stargirl. And she would embody everything that I loved about my sister. My sister, because she was the youngest of three, had a lot of drive. She was funny. She would do anything that her older brothers would try and do, and she did it usually better. She was amazing. She had this endless energy. And so I created this character, Courtney Whitmore, Stargirl, who is about a teenage girl who lives in LA, and her mom gets remarried, and they move to Nebraska where she's unhappy. She's got no friends and doesn't know anybody. And she discovers that her stepfather used to be the sidekick to a superhero. And she finds that superhero's old costume and equipment, this cosmic staff that has power, and she takes it for a joyride and ends up becoming a superhero. And her stepfather has to come out of retirement and ends up becoming a sidekick again to his stepdaughter. The tone of the book and the show that we've made is really fun and optimistic and hopeful, because that's who Courtney was. And it allowed me to channel my grief. Like, for those who are in the beginnings of it, it's hard. It's really hard. And, I, especially right now, I feel for everybody that is experiencing this during the COVID pandemic. But one thing that really helped me was creating this character and putting all my passion and my energy and the things I already loved, into redirecting that into something that mattered so much more to me with my sister. So I managed to marry these things together, marry my passion of comic books and superheroes with my love and my grief for my sister, and turn it into something that I could, as Ken said, take my, kind of take my my emotions and my anger and direct it into something constructive. That really helped me. And it also helped me connect with people, because for me, the whole entire, loss of it, beyond, I wish my sister was here to play with my son, and I'd love to see what she thought of everything going on, just everything in life. You miss the people we lose that are so close to us, and that grief is so powerful, and it is, it is kind of never ending, but there's a way where it evolves, and it changes. You look into your eyes and you see a broken heart. You always will feel that, but it changes, it evolves, and you will become whole in a different way. You're changed forever, but in a different way. But so I created this character, and I pitched it to DC Comics back in 1998 with an artist named Lee Moder, and it got published, and it was a fun book. It went 14 issues, and then the character went on to become a member of a superhero team called the Justice Society of America, which is this really cool superhero team from the 1940s that DC had, the first superhero team ever. And she carried on this legacy of Starman and had this cool cosmic staff. I've worked in comic books, film, and television for 24 years now, and over the years she's been in animation, and she's appeared in TV shows and comic books and everything, and had toys. And I have this cool statue of her that the people who created her costume made. That it's stuff like this that just means a lot to me, because as much as I love superheroes, like it's more than a superhero to me. I had a chance to pitch this TV show to CW, who I've worked with for a long time on things like Flash and Batwoman, and it's and with Warner Brothers, and the show's on right now. And the greatest joy I get is my parents watching every episode, and my brother. My mom always texts me like, I've watched it episode 3-4 times, and it's really fun and rewarding. And the most rewarding thing I get out of this is that my family's connecting with it, because as I said, like the biggest loss and mourning is really that connection to someone you love so much, that unconditional love, that forever love, that family love. But it's that connection that I really mourned, I really lost. And my desire to connect with people is really why I tell stories, why I work in comic books or television or movies, is because I want to connect with people emotionally. Like, I like to have a shared emotional connection. And by putting Courtney into the comic books and TV shows and everything else, it allowed me to kind of express and introduce this character, my sister, to everybody in a way through entertainment, that allowed me to present it in a fun way, like in a really exciting way. And she's a fun character, and she's funny, and she's overzealous, and she's someone that definitely does not go in with a plan as a superhero who's 16 years old and leading a couple other kids around that are trying to be superheroes. It's just inherently fun, and so it's fun for me to work on. And one of the things that I was able to do was when I was working with Breck Bassinger, who plays Courtney. I mean, the casting, if you can imagine, trying to cast that character was really incredibly tough, because it is so emotional, and I'm so particular, and it was really who's going to embody the spirit of my sister. It's a complicated emotional thing, and after all those years, I had processed a lot of my grief, but I'm still processing it. Like, making the show every day, I was faced with, you know, talking about her, and it was great to talk about her. I loved talking about her. I loved um, when people would ask me questions. The prop master said, "Hey, can I put a picture of her on, you know, Courtney's bulletin board in her bedroom?" It was, and he had suffered loss in a different way, but a very, very real way. And it's that, you know, that loss, I think, that connected me emotionally to a lot of people. And one of the things, if I had, you know, if I could go back to, you know, maybe the years right after I lost my sister, I would have tried to connect more with people who had loss. I internalized a lot of it, and channeled it through my, you know, through my art rather than through people around me. Um, and I think I could have evolved or healed a little faster if I had had connections like this. You know, if I had connections, or I sought out connections um, for grief. And I actually didn't. It took me 8 years to talk to somebody about it, somebody professional about grief, and it helped immensely. It changed my attitude incredibly. Um, but uh, but I understand how hard and challenging it is. You feel so alone, you know. Even my brother and I grieve differently. Like, and he and I are like best friends, but he and I both grieve differently, and there wasn't a whole lot of, you know, discussion because it's so known between family members. Like you share the same and suffer the same loss, but reaching out, making those connections is so, I think, so important and so valuable. Um, and really has helped me, even now 24 years later, helps me just continue to celebrate and evolve and, you know, look forward to everything because of, you know, because of what I've had the opportunity to do in the name of my sister, in the name of Courtney. And um and I think if whatever your passion is, it doesn't have to be obviously comic books or television, but I would look at whatever your lifelong passion has been, and is there a way to incorporate the loss of your loved one into that? Is there a way to kind of merge them together, because it becomes a celebration, which is what helped me as I crafted this character to be a celebratory character, to be a positive character, to have, you know, my greatest uh um my greatest hope is going to Comic-Con, and when I see people dressed up like Stargirl, it's fun because it's her, at least her essence carried along in a very different way. You know, most people who read the comics, I mean, they do now because of the TV show, and I've talked a lot about it. But when I first introduced the comic book, I didn't talk a lot about how she was based on my sister because it was more personal. You know, I talked about it a little bit, but really I talked more about the comic book as a story and the character as a character. And ultimately now it's become, I think, easier for me to talk about it and to look at it as a very, you know, ultimately a positive, you know, a positive thing that's out in the world. Like, I think part of my desire was um, to put some of that positive energy. It was all my desire to put that positive energy back into the world, and and I tried my best to do that. The One of the things that was hardest for me, and this is just obviously all my opinions and my personal experience, everyone deals with it in a different way and feels differently, but one of the things that was so devastating to me is when Courtney first passed away. You know, people often say, "Oh, I feel them around me." Well, I didn't feel her at all. Like, I just felt that emptiness, that kind of like loneliness, that vacancy. It was so powerful, and so overwhelming. That's really uh, what drove me to try and create something to put it back into the world. You know, and I feel her much more now in a very different and real way. My experience was really trying to create something to not replace her at all, because it's impossible to do, but to carry on a part of her, to, you know, to do something that was important to me and my family, that would be fun, that would put a smile on their faces, that would helped me process it and incorporate it, and also create something fun for other people. Like I would never have created Stargirl if it wasn't for my sister. And and that's okay. Like that's good. Like it's good that that character exists um out of that loss. I think it's it's special for me. But then following her, like doing her adventures, like writing her in comic books and television has been a really interesting experience too, because the character eventually takes a life of their own. It's almost like the daughter of my sister, or like the there's a thread of it, but then the character evolves and becomes something entirely new, and springs forth from that, and that's wonderful. It's it's what life is supposed to be all about, is everything influencing everything else as it continues to evolve and change. And there's a lot of complexities emotionally in that as you watch it happen. um but it was it's been a special journey, and having the show premiere now has been a dream. Like I feel like my entire life, from when I was a kid and first got bit by the comic book bug, everything I've experienced, the loss of my sister, but everything else I've experienced has kind of led me up to this show that we got to make, that everyone poured their passion and love into. And one other thing that that I find really interesting, when I talk about my sister, even now, it's very raw. It's very easy to kind of open up that wound again and feel that pain, even after all these years. But there's also a, a change in that pain. It can turn into something that it's never going to be I don't want to say positive, but it can be productive. It can be like the emotional evolution that you can take on. There can be a lot of good that comes from it, and I think everyone that we've lost would want us to find what is that good that we can find. What is that hope that we can get to? Because hope is emotion's a funny thing, because it's not tangible. We can't put hope in a glass or grief in a glass, or measure it in any quantifiable way. It's so individual, and within us. But I think that hope, when you talk about hope, and Stargirl certainly is all hope embodied. She's the most hopeful superhero out there, to her detriment sometimes, because she gets into trouble because she thinks she can handle anything, which was very much my sister Courtney. But hope isn't just empty hope. Hope also requires drive to enact it, and it's hard sometimes to get out of bed or get up or be motivated to do anything when you're in the middle of grieving, or when you're overcome with it. And I think you need to allow yourself the time. I certainly wish I allowed myself a little more time to process it and live with it, and be okay with, like, it's okay not to want to get up. But part of finding hope, is finding the drive to do something. And maybe, look, if you love jigsaw puzzles, maybe it's just that day, just do a jigsaw puzzle. Like, do, like, get yourself up there and do something. That always helped me, is finding, an activity to just get me going to things I love. And that's why I got into comic books. I'm like, well, I'm going to read comics, because I'm going to escape into this comic book world. I'm going to go through my comic book collection. I'm going to organize my comics. It kind of distracted me from just living in the immediate grief of everything. And through that, I started to think, as I was just getting into the business of storytelling, well, the first comic book I'm going to create for my sister. And so I eventually got into, that. And it took me a while to create. It took me like a year to kind of create Courtney and Stargirl, and set it up and sell it. And it was hard, but it was a great journey. Whatever your emotions are, channel them constructively, and it's going to take time to figure out how to do that. It took me 3 years to figure out, I'm going to channel this into this comic book and have the comic book come out. But I think that channeling process is incredibly valuable. And for me, making connections with others who've lost people. I've met some of my closest friends, just they lost their sisters, and there was something about that connection that you didn't have to over explain how it felt, because you knew the other person knew how it felt. As a human being, I think connection is so important. My love for comic books was just, I connected with people who loved comic books. My best friend, Josh, I saw him reading a comic book. I'm like, oh, you like comics? And in high school, we ended up being best friends and still. And it's those kind of shared connections in life that for me have always helped. You feel not so alone and understood. Because at the end of the day, that's, really we want to feel understood and not alone and loved. And I think that's why it's so hard when you lose a family member. For me, I lost my sister, and that you lose that connection of love and being loved from somebody that's so important to you, and also more in that all the things that they could do, that they would have gone on to do. And I think about that a lot. What would she be doing? And when I think about it, sometimes I put it in the comic books for the show of like, oh, she'd be going to fight supervillains and kicking ass, because in my brain, my imagination likes to imagine that she was destined to be a superhero. And so, that's really my story of loss, and how I channeled it into something really positive. And that not only helped me, but my family, and made a lot of people I don't know happy, entertained a lot of people, and does now. And whatever it is, whether it's talking to another person that has lost someone, or trying to channel your grief or your love even into something positive that you have passion for, I really encourage you to do it. It's been 24 years since I've lost my sister, and I miss her every day, still. But there's a lot of positive that has come in life and still to come, both related to what my sister has inspired me to do, and outside of it, too. It's there's a lot of good stuff out there. Even during this pandemic, there's still a lot of great stuff out there. And this is a time of reflection, and it's even harder at times because we have so much time to think, and sometimes that's our most dangerous thing, but often it's our best. But thank you for listening. Thank you for having me on here. I really, this is a wonderful program, and I hope you all have a great day, and stay strong, and don't forget, hope requires action behind it.
I've learned that it helped me to help others, to know I'm not the only one, put one foot in front of the other, find a life.
Adding hope to the darkness, you start on the trip to recovery.
Reach deep down inside and say, I am going to live on.
We laugh, we cry, and remember.
Hope without action doesn't work. Hope with action can change the world.
We always say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours.